I'm Shannon.
And I'm Mark.
And this is Dirt Sailor the podcast.
On this episode of Dirt Sailor the podcast, we will be discussing Governor Hochul, the FBI, Donald Trump, Joseph R. Biden, the State of the Union, and the U.S. military setting up a temporary port in Gaza. Happy Throat Punch Thursday.
Happy Throat Punch Thursday.
How are you doing on this fine day?
You know what? I'm doing good. When we finally pick a king to run this country and get out of this representative republic realm, I'll be doing really well.
You really want a king? It could be King Joe Biden.
No.
King Obama.
King Kamala.
King Kamala Walla Harris.
Yes, that sounds better. Sounds more king and queen-like.
Her Majesty, Queen Kamala Walla Harris. Did you know?
I did.
The FBI is on a manhunt for an Iranian intelligence officer who is allegedly here to oversee a plot to assassinate current and former federal government officials as revenge for the Trump administration's 2020 airstrike. Killing.
For the 2020 airstrike, huh?
Yeah, that's what it says.
I'm surprised none of them have ever come over here. None of them have ever come to America to revenge the janitors and the gardeners and just the people driving around in vehicles when they decide to drop a tomahawk somewhere that they think is somebody of importance, and they know it's not. It's just a show.
Yeah, well, this one's for Soleimani.
Well, I guess Soleimani should not have been directing the death of Americans.
100%.
It's called quid pro quo, this for that, right?
This for that.
This for that. Really not quid
But it would be more of a
quo,
tit for tat.
Yes.
A tit for tat, this for that.
This missile for that bomb.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what all goes down, because they're just looking at him for this particular official for spearheading, not for the actual doing, overseeing.
Well, I'm sure they know where they're at, or they'll find them. Or, I mean, if we can geofence, if we can track, everyday Americans that just happen to watch a video about January 6th and then FBI comes knocking on their door, I would assume this person, male or female, should not be too hard to find.
It will be interesting to see male. Well, he's a male. But it'll be interesting to see if we get a follow-up for that. Speaking of January 6th, another little truth bomb coming out, that there was testimony given that Trump had offered up at least 10,000 National Guards, men and women.
Really? And who declined?
Nancy Pelosi.
Oh, see,
but
it's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, in addition, so that had been floating around, but it had been debunked as not true by the news media. But it was given as testimony to the January 6th Committee on Finding Truth, and they took it out of the record.
Well, of course they did, because they don't want to know the truth. They're not truth tellers, and they're not truth seekers. There's a man that, for whatever reason, part of the country hates. And like I've asked you many times, why do we hate him? What has he done? Oh, greatest economy in American history. More black people, more Hispanic, more Asian, more people of color employed than in the history of the country. Safest border in years. But what did he do? Oh, that's right. He got onto Twitter at 2:00 in the morning and called some people fat. I didn't. They say he did. Some people ugly. Some people idiots. Is that worth trying to destroy an entire nation over that?
One, I don't think so. Two, they give it just as good as he does. He's been called, an orange Oompa Loompa. He's been called all kinds of names. And it's one of those ones where you give as good as you get, or you get as good as you give. It goes back and forth. So if that is where we draw a line in the sand, then I know a lot of people that could no longer be at any level of government because they have said the very same rude things.
Yes, they all do. They all do it on a quite continual basis too. They lie repeatedly. This is nothing new.
It is not. But something else that has come out, and I understand there's been little bits and pieces, and then we get told that that's not truthful or that didn't really happen, but they won't release the truth. Well, another thing that we were told, part of the charges that happened on January 6th is because certain protected individuals were in the building. Depending on who the protected official is, they can reclassify a certain area based on who's coming into the building, and it can be a temporary classification. And then once they exit the building, it no longer has that high-level protected status. So some of the charges that happened against January 6th individuals were based on the fact that we had the vice president and the future vice president inside the building. Who is the protected official, who's supposed to be there, who's not supposed to be there. But with these protections, you can get extra charges if you commit certain actions. Well, I guess now it's coming out that Kamala Harris was not in the building when they said she was in the building, and not where she was said to have been. And why that's important is because certain charges happen based on which officials were in which buildings at which times. We have the bomber case, the unsolved bomb case for the RNC and the DNC. On January 5th to January 6th, somewhere in that neighborhood, it is claimed that bombs were planted outside of both buildings. And as time has gone on, and there's been a request to watch the videos to see if news agencies, it's newsworthy, so have news agencies report on the obscure figure maybe that goes, maybe somebody recognizes him or her, or maybe they're able to do more tracking, like we geofenced all of these January 6ers, why not the person that was in that area? Anyway, I'm kind of getting a little bit off track. But Kamala Harris, as a protectee, was going to the DNC, and yet we have video of bombs placed, and that she was supposed to have a speaking engagement or meet with people there, but yet she was one of the protectees inside of the Capitol building that people are getting charges for having committed a crime while she is in the building. So now we have videos that are being released of her on January 6th, showing her exiting the building at a time when she's supposed to be
in the building?
In the building. Or I should say exiting the building at a time before she's supposed to be in the building.
Well, it appears there's a lot of hanky-panky, a lot of mistelling of the truth, a lot of hiding of the videos, a lot of people who were there that weren't there. Well, when did the election happen?
The election happened in November, but the certification of the election was supposed to be January 6th.
Correct. And with all of the upheaval and people at the congressional level knowing that there was a lot of Americans upset because they were watching the same polling we were. They were watching the same numbers rise, and then people go to bed and wake up, and then they fell and changed. They saw all this. They knew that the FBI had people, well, they know now that the FBI had people inside all of these organizations that were going to go there January 6th. You have the president claiming that he offered up National Guardsmen, which was declined. So do you think this was some kind of ruse, potentially, that the sole purpose was to come up with a crime? Oh, what is the crime? Sedition?
Seditious conspiracy, because now you have more than one person, so they're in a conspiracy, even though, as I've said before, you cannot be in a conspiracy with the government. They've lied about how many government officials that they had on site and how many who were working at the behest of the government or on behalf of the government. How many informants, how many actual true officials there were, plainclothes officers.
Well, apparently there were hundreds there.
But yet
Apparently
we're
the-
told there's none.
Apparently the Capitol Police chief was not put into the loop either.
And in addition to that, when trying to speak up as to what happened, who got fired, the person who wasn't kept in the loop on things, even though they're a high level official for the police, the person who wasn't kept up in the loop, and the person that when speaking out on what happened, they don't like what he has to say, so he has to go.
Like I say, that's why it's confusing. And then again, it's not, because there's such hatred for Donald Trump. Even when New York PD firemen are at a speech in a church this past week, they booed the speaker. They praised Trump. Now the leadership within the New York Fire Department, even though they say it's not political, they want all their names.
Yeah, well, they'll say it's not political unless you get on the wrong side of whomever is in charge.
Okay, so do you still have a First Amendment right inside of a church?
No, apparently not.
Well,
You don't have the right. You can be forced to work somewhere and you can lose all your rights. No. Okay.
Apparently you don't have many rights anymore in New York City.
They have already shown us that they don't want us to have rights and they don't want people in New York to have rights. So yes, I personally would say yes, absolutely. They have First Amendment rights. They have, you can have this freedom of speech. That's a First Amendment right. Freedom of assembly. You can have the right to peaceably assemble if that is something that you want to do, whether it's for your government or against your government or another group. But you have the freedom to be together in a religious manner, the freedom of religion, and then the freedom to say what you want, whether it is political or apolitical or religious or non-religious. You have certain fundamental rights that are enshrined in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the amendments that followed. But yet we're somehow told that is, you have a job, so you're a fireman. You're not allowed to have any other opinions that are outside of your leadership.
Well, see, if it wasn't Letitia James and the shoe was on the other foot and they started jeering a Republican or somebody that leaned in that direction, it would be okay. They would not be asking for their names. They would be applauding them.
Oh, absolutely. Remember the one lady, she flipped off Trump. I want to say she lost her job as a government contractor because she was a government contractor, but then they went back to make sure that she could have everything she could ever want because we liked that she was doing these things. She was a bicycle rider that the Trump motorcade passed her up. It's like, you can be a government contractor, but as long as you're hating the right person, it's totally okay.
So confusing how we allowed one group to have so much power.
Well, the same group we have in New York, we have it happening in California. Speaking of what is truth and what you want your kids or grandkids to learn, inside of schools now, they're trying to mandate a certain amount of literacy, but the type of literacy that they are going for is online literacy. And they want you to understand what is real news and what is fake news. So now you're going to have to take classes on understanding real and fake media. So it's media literacy. And what is and isn't real? What is and isn't acceptable? Oh, do you believe that something happened on January 6th that doesn't fit the explicit narrative of the left? Oh, we have to retrain you on understanding.
That sounds like Canada and the way a psychologist or psychiatrist lost a court case and has to be retrained. Why?
Because he has a certain belief system that he doesn't espouse to his patients, but that he puts in a First Amendment, and I understand it's Canadian, so they don't have the First Amendment, but a certain level of freedom of speech, that they don't like his speech that he puts out publicly. So he has to be retrained in his profession because he would dare say something publicly, speech-wise, that they don't agree with.
Yet it's okay for, let's call them management, the elected officials up there, the management group, to espouse all the garbage they want, and it's okay. But a common citizen does it, or somebody that has a professional career, then they need to be retrained. My gosh, that sounds a lot Hitler-esque, Stalin-esque, Mao-esque. You know, what is going on here?
Well, we've seen a lot of what's up is down, what's right is left, etc. And even when we've been talking about it for years now on this podcast, but even before this podcast, when people would bring up, hey, we have let's just say a drug problem. We have a drug problem, or we have a theft problem. And we would have leadership that would come and say, well, the problem is we're criminalizing it. We would find a solution if we decriminalized it. So we're going to make open air drug dens totally kosher. And we are going to, in fact, allow more theft, because people are only stealing to put food on the table. They're not stealing for any other reason. So they start decriminalizing. And you had people who were, generally speaking, right-leaning people saying, I don't think this is going to fix the problem. And if you brought up that you didn't think that it was going to fix the problem, that you thought it was going to make it worse, you were dumb, you were stupid, you didn't understand people. And in fact, sometimes they would even say, you're not even telling the truth because there's not a theft problem. Who are you going to believe, me or your lion eyes? Type of situation. You would say, hey, we have a huge theft problem. And they would say, nothing's happening here, nothing to see here. Oh, hey, we have a problem with people defecating on the streets. And like, you're just making it up. That never really happened. You're a liar. You're a fraud. You're just trying to make people who are unhoused feel bad and make people who have drug addictions feel bad.
So would that mean the guy in the Bay Area that wrote the app to point out to everyone where the defecation and the needles were?
The fact that became a thing. And then even so much as the government started going to the business owners, telling them if they don't clean up after all of these homeless individuals and clean the poop off the street out in front of their businesses, that they would get fined. Why? Because they know they can't fine the person who's doing their business, but you can fine the business for not taking care of the sidewalk, even though it's a public.
But you can arrest them and send them to an encampment to get them treatment, because that is I believe, health code violation.
Should be.
Yes, it is. They just don't want to enforce. Just like the sheriff up in King County in Washington is now telling his deputies not to enforce city's new homeless encampment legislation. They passed legislation saying that you cannot overnight camp within 500 feet of schools and parks until the constitutionality of the order is resolved. Therefore, the sheriff should be enforcing a law that he has now been presented with, or an ordinance that he raised his right hand to uphold.
So 2 things on that. I will say that San Francisco ended up with such a problem that they are now doing what people on the right said to do years ago. So they just passed 2 laws. One that will tie welfare to drug screening. So what people were doing is they were getting welfare because they weren't working, but they were just using it to fuel their drug habit. And 2, it will boost police powers in the city. So what's funny is London Breed and others like London Breed were saying how there wasn't a problem, isn't a problem, everything's great, everything's hunky-dory. Well, if their policies were working, why did they have to do a 180? And start with these ballot measures.
And like you said, if you hide the crimes and you don't count the stats, then there's no statistical data there to tell you there is a problem. But like you said, you can see it with your own eyes when you're stepping over needles, stepping over dead people, stepping over drunks, drug addicts, and poops in the middle of the street.
Yes. So San Francisco has done a 180. It will be interesting what happens with the King County area because of the ordinance that's passed. So they'll have to see if it stands up to constitutional muster. Now, there has been other sheriffs that have said they're not going to enforce certain Second Amendment laws because they don't believe they'll pass constitutional muster. So I can respect that he's saying, hey,
yes, it goes both directions. Hey, let's wait. He's got a wait and see approach, but you have to do something to them while you're waiting and seeing. What if it takes a year to litigate it and get it through the process? You just can't let this thing fester and get worse.
Right. And in Stockton, as well as San Francisco, I believe it was happening in Oakland, because they were treating things as non-crimes. You had prostitutes with their Johns right next to them, so they have to do with their not their Johns, sorry, with their pimps right next to them, and they have to do what their pimp says. They would proposition minors in front of schools. And the schools, they would call the police saying, hey, we have illegal activity, and they are propositioning minors, and the police would say, we can't enforce any of the laws because we were told that they are essentially unenforceable.
Well, it's interesting you say that because you have leadership even higher like Talib, who's proposing $1,400 a month for illegals.
Oh, yes, because we don't actually care about Americans here. That's one thing I've come to realize. All of these people who are illegally entering all of these cities, sometimes the whole entire state. I mean, Rashida Tlaib is wanting it for her state, even though she's a Fed, but they're trying to get cash money for people who have illegally entered the United States, and they will essentially be placed at a higher position than United States citizens and lawful permanent residents.
Long-term, law-abiding citizens and permanent residents.
Yes. They will be put at a position above them because other cities and states have already started giving cash money. Well, technically it's not cash, it's a card. But giving them cards with money on it. They are giving them housing. They are giving them years worth of solutions where you have single moms and single dads and just low-income families, whole families, that can't get assistance here in the United States because they make too much money.
Yes.
But yet you're willing to say, I don't care where in the world you come from. Here's a stack of cash. Here's a place to live. Here's food on your table. We don't care about, here's a job. Here's a work permit. Here's job status.
And now along with that, our illustrious president, let me back up 2 feet. Apparently, cheating is not cheating. But there's been several pundits that have been saying this year is going to be one of the worst elections, dirtiest elections in history. Nobody's been saying the safest elections. And Mr. Biden is already starting by trying to register or having illegals registered to vote. Okay, well, isn't that election tampering?
So if so, then California has been spot on for years because they will auto-register you when you do your DMV application for a driver license. Now, technically, you're supposed to register yourself to vote. But California does the opposite where you're automatically registered and you have to choose not to be. It is illegal, still federally illegal, for a person who is not a United States citizen to register to vote.
As it should be.
However, they're making it very difficult for people who probably don't even speak the language. On the forms, I know we get different forms in different languages, but a lot of times we have people who help others fill out their forms. They're automatically registered. They may not have known that.
And
so it's through no fault of their own. But then if you, in some cases, I have seen it. I have seen the court case where the person put no, they are not a U.S. citizen. And California still submitted their registration to get them registered to vote. So when they got a ballot in the mail, they thought they could legally vote.
And that happened to one of my coworkers' wives who was from a country that will remain unnamed And she did the same thing. When she filled out her paperwork, she put no, she's not a U.S. citizen. When the documentation showed up to the house, the ballot, she voted.
Because she thought she could.
And they wanted to send her back home.
And it's such a level of ridiculousness from state government and federal government. But these are the ones that we know about. How many do we not know about?
Yes, and all you people, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, Libertarians, whatever other Communist Party, whatever else there is, stop cheating. Stop
Everyone.
cheating. Yes. Let's have truth in advertising, truth in lending, whatever one of those.
Free and fair elections.
There you go. Free and fair elections. And like we've been saying, and I've been pounding this $1 million desk of mine every day, we need to re-register at every federal election, every 4 years. After the federal election's over in 2024, all that gets wiped off the board. It'll be 2028. Then everybody re-registers and you go vote. We have to stop this criminality. If not, you can take this country like a pack of Mr. bubblegum wrapper, wad it up, and pitch it into trash, because that's all the country's worth.
Right. If we are a country without borders and we're a country without laws, why is it only the U.S. citizens have to abide by the law? You know what? You want to come in here, allow people to violate federal law all over the place? Why are you still collecting any tax dollars from me? Why do you think you can tax my land? You know what? Go away. Go away. You're not providing me with anything. I'm providing you with things. You're requiring of me things that you don't require of non-citizens. In fact, you're giving it away for the non-citizens. You're taking away the laws. You have Denver, who, because of the illegal immigration crisis that has been going on, they are now choosing illegal immigrants over government workers, and they are starting to give government workers no hours to work because they're reappropriating the money for other things. So they're not calling it a layoff. They're calling it an hourly reduction, and that hourly reduction is going to zero. Then you have California, who in a full level of housing revolution, so not just giving people rent money, they want to give illegal immigrants a 20% down to buy a house. They want to gift them.
Let's sell our houses to them. How's that sound?
But 20% down, 20% free money, 20% down. You don't have to pay it back unless and until you sell the house.
Yet, if you unwrap all this, our FBI director is sounding the alarm again on the wide array of very dangerous threats at our borders.
Whose fault is that?
Joseph Biden and his underlings. Does he have a middle name?
R.
Joseph R. Biden and his underlings. But it's Director Ray that's sounding the alarm, so that would be one of his underlings.
Robinette, by the way. Joseph Robinette Biden Jr.
Joseph Robin Hood.
Robin the Hood. No, Robin Peter to pay Paul.
Biden. So he's stealing money from the middle class and the lower class and giving it to the illegals. So it's Joseph Robin Hood Biden. Got it.
Yes. He is absolutely... It's terrible. It is absolutely terrible what he's doing. And where we've been led to, because not only in California are we giving 20% down, and in other states we're giving just cash so you can go live your best life. There are even people who are illegal making videos of how they've had a U.S. citizen child. And so all of the benefits that they're getting for that U.S. citizen child, that the way they're talking about it is they are owed this. So that's how they are making their living here, is by having U.S. citizen children and then getting benefits off of them. But yet if you're here working above board, working not under the table, or not working at all for some people, but if you are working, you cannot get these same benefits. Now, another thing that we're seeing is some of the areas don't have enough housing, and we already, according to our representatives, had a housing crisis. And I believe that was part of Joe Biden's money to help jumpstart America back into Amazingville was to help more houses get built. Now, if we already have a housing problem, why are we taking away from U.S. citizens and putting illegals in there?
Correct. And here's the problem with federal government trying to help with the housing problem. Okay, and I'm not bagging on unions here by any means, because unions have a place. Not all of it's good, not all of it's bad. But if you have a budget, and your budget is to build 1,000 homes, yet you're using federal union contractors, you cannot meet that goal because their salaries, their pensions, their medical is so good, so to speak, that a normal house that a normal general contractor would build for $200,000 costs you what? $500,
Much more.
$600. That's why these homeless shelters that we're building, little tough sheds and such form, when they do the math, 20 homeless shelters or sheds cost $500,000 each. Misappropriation of monies and misdirecting funds, just like I know this is kind of off the rails, so to speak, but that's why we'll never finish the high-speed rail. And that's why Hawaii has had to borrow and take money from federal grants like 20 times for a rail system that should have been done 5-10 years ago.
Right. And then they open on your sidebar, they open their rail system, but it doesn't go where they said that it was going to go.
Not even close.
So it doesn't do what they said it was going to do. That would be like us finally connecting up the high-speed rail, and you go from Modesto to Visalia. What's the point?
Well, see, and I don't understand, and I've beat this drum a million times. Now we're on the high-speed rail and unions, and let's go freeways, and let's go government buildings. Why they don't take prisoners, teach them a trade like they used to, put them to work, save money.
The reason they don't is unions. Unions,
Whoa.
Yeah, unions were upset, and
Yes.
other companies were upset
Gosh,
that they
you were
couldn't
fast.
they couldn't compete with that labor market. So they thought that they should not be allowed to take away jobs from people who aren't in jail.
Well, so I help run some projects at my work occasionally. I've done a few hundred over the years. When we had some ramp work done where the airplanes park, where we had the ramp re-asphalted, restriped. I was talking one day with the guy that holds up the sign that says, stop, go, yield, slow movement, fast movement, whatever the case may be. This is a unskilled laborer. He was getting prevailing wage because it was on a federal airport. $35 to $60 an hour, depending on the time of the day and the day of the week. Now, you mean to tell me, and I know it's a union thing, like you just said, you cannot take a person out of somewhere and give him that job. Okay? You don't have to take all of the regular laborers out, but you intertwine and intermix.
Well, you could do ones that are on work release programs that don't need to have the correctional officers accompany them to the site. And other places are able to give prisoners skill sets because they do have it set up to do that. And in fact, there is some that still exist in California, but they are harder to come by.
Yes, and there are just not enough of them. Like I see guys in orange jumpsuits that say Fresno County on them and others out at the airport at the forestry side of our building doing what? Lawn work.
Yes.
Pruning, mowing, edging, and that's part of their work furlough program.
Yes, and what happens and I know I've talked about this before, but for those of you who have not heard my story at a house that I lived at in Fresno, not where I live now, but the house before, we ended up in a situation where the city of Fresno gave our home builder a free pass on having collected money to do the shrubbery and the road work and everything around our community. And even though the housing company collected this money over the years, when it was time to turn it over to the city because the last house had been sold, the city of Fresno gave them a free pass, and then they reassessed all the homeowners in our area a very high in the 4 figures for a single year. Coming up with 4 figures in a month's time is ridiculous, but that's what happened to us. And along with the notice of, oh, by the way, this should have been done, but it didn't, and Fresno City gave a free pass, you'll also be responsible for the care and maintenance in the future. Oh, but don't worry. Fresno has somebody that they will refer to do this business. We had no choice. We didn't get to pick who was going to mow the lawn and keep the plants and do all of that. So they get to do whatever they want after the housing company got a free pass after collecting all that money. So it's just like a little in cahoots. Who should be doing that? Hey, prisoners on work release, jailers on work release, people who need to do their community service hours.
Yes, and I know there is programs out there because I see them. There's just not enough of them. There's thousands of people in prison. There's thousands of low-level people that might learn a trade, that might learn respect, that might turn around.
So this kind of goes with something that you've said before, and it kind of latched in my brain, and it's been hanging on there over the weeks and months as we've been talking about this. So what do? They come up with some sort of a nonprofit. They maybe put together a drug rehab program or something else, and they give it to the nonprofits. And who's making all the money? And who's not getting rehabbed? Who's not getting appropriate level care? We, society, and those who are struggling with addiction or struggling with other issues are basically left to reoffend because they're not getting the true help that they need. But those nonprofits are out there
making money. And that's what I actually learned this Saturday at Men's Prayer Breakfast. Because we had a guest speaker that talked about Poverello House, the Salvation Army, the Fresno Rescue Mission, and what a great job they do on the front end, getting people in there, getting people with alcohol and drug addictions in, getting them help, getting their turnaround started, but there was nothing for them when they left. So the peer pressure after they walk out of those centers was immense. So most of them, the recidivism rate is very high. They go right back into their same old habits. And this gentleman, through his hard work, had built a home or built some homes down on Belmont, and they house men that are clean, and they actually help retrain them. They help get them going. And there's a mentorship program that keeps them on the straight and narrow to help them out. Great program. Great ideas.
Yeah, and what did it take? It took someone who's not getting government funds, and I'm not saying that Fresno Rescue Mission, all of them are getting government funds, but it took somebody who's not, who saw the need, to then turn around and try to help meet the need.
Yes,
and it's
a pure
wonderful
donation.
Yes,
pure donation plan, and he was actually an employee, a salesman for 40-some years in the chemical industry. He was a chemist. Very, very cool, very interesting story. That kind of, you talk about City of Fresno and things happening there with you and the plants and rezoning and actually almost like a Melrose bond or getting ripped from some more taxes. Part of the story, I don't have the whole story because I didn't have time to read and listen today. However, we're looking at a new Costco.
Oh, I heard a little bit about this as well.
Yes, on the west side of town here in Fresno. And actually, the Costco is set to go. They're set to start building, but there's a little hiccup because Costco at this particular center wants to put in a car wash.
Yes.
And there's an issue with the city of Fresno wanting them to rezone part of that property for the car wash, and they say it's for traffic.
Yes, the claim is it will have a negative impact on the communities that are around Costco.
Okay, so it's going to be one of the largest Costcos in the entire world. That already tells you there's going to be a lot of traffic.
Yes.
Costco, if they chose, could just say, forget the car wash. We don't want to rezone. We're good. And they could start building. But obviously they see a need for it over there, and it's probably a good profit center, and they want to do it. But this goes to show you that Fresno and the city fathers, they always make mistakes when it comes to rezoning and new big corporations come into town, because our councilmen don't think outside the box. That's why we lost Bass Pro Shop here. And we lost, I believe the Great Lodge was thinking about coming
The
here.
Great
at one
Wolf
time.
Lodge
Great Wolf
was going to
Lodge.
go to Visalia.
Yes.
I think Fresno was just like, nope.
And
they noped.
And they kind of botched that as well, both communities. So what they should do is put their head down and say, build it.
So if Costco forgoes the car wash, and there's some other element in there too, I can't remember what the second one is. Apparently it's already zoned correctly, and it's a private party to a private party selling the land, because Costco's going to buy the land. It's not a lease. Because of that, if the city of Fresno continues to push the requirements that they want to push on Costco could drop, and I wish I could remember the second thing, but they could drop the car wash and whatever that second thing is, and the city of Fresno can't stop them.
Right.
It's already appropriately zoned. So whatever they want them to do with the car wash, they're hanging their hat on a very small part of their business.
Right. Less than 1% of 1% is what they're balking at. And what if it killed the whole deal? And that particular location there would generate $2 million a year in revenue and taxes for the city. They're going to botch that again when build the car wash. And this is about revenue. That's all this is about. If they rezone, there's probably some additional tax or fee or something.
Something that they have to pay for. I'm sure with a car wash, they have to pay some sort of environmental impact fee.
Well, they have to do that anyway.
No. I mean, outside, like, because car washes nowadays, they have to, their water system has to be of a certain, type, and they have to reclaim. They have to do, and I bet you there's even more fees associated with that they probably want. I know okay, so let's say that the problem is it's going to bring in too many cars.
Yes.
They would just tell them no on the rezone, or they would tell them yes. Those are your options, because the place is the place.
Well, apparently...
Is it just... I'm sorry. It's got to be money.
Yes, the city fathers or the councilmen had a meeting with Costco's executive group recently, and the Costco group came out of there shaking their heads because the council members and the executive group could not give them one explanation or answer a single question as to why they wanted them to rezone, why they couldn't do it, on and on and on. That goes to like the Gap. Okay. When the Gap came here quite a few years ago, from what I do recall, we'd have to look it up so you can get the numbers 100%, but a lot of the money was sold to them for next to nothing. A lot of the property was sold to the Gap for next to nothing. Well, I kind of laughed because I knew what was coming as a layman, and they stuck it to them in permit fees. The permit fees were out of this world.
Because they could.
Because they could.
Yeah, there's a lot of because they could. And what are we going to do about it? One, because they could, that I just recently heard about, was with the Amish community. So there has been a small Amish-run raw dairy, and their claim is that they're trying to put this Amish farmer out of business, and they cited safety issues with raw milk.
Poisonous milk. Too much
as the reason
stuff.
They should not be allowed to be in business, essentially. However, this Amish farm has some of the best safety records, and they have happy, healthy families, basically. I mean, a lot of the Amish community, as far as their health, is really high. And consumers of this milk, they want to buy it. They want fresh, raw milk. They see benefits for their health, but yet the government is here trying to shut them down. So when asked, okay, in court, what what happened that led you to want to shut this down? Like, how many citations have you given for outbreaks with this raw milk or health violations? They came up with 0. But yet they still want to strong arm and shut the Amish community down.
Because some guy or gal has a chip on their shoulder there, and they want to show the Amish the kind of power they yield. That's all it boils down to. Oh, wait a minute. That's what you do with milk, right?
Well, that is pasteurized milk,
Yes.
so they're selling it raw.
I know.
And you know what? I had raw milk at my home, raw goat's milk, and I turned it into powdered milk, and I turned it into butter, and it took work to get it there. It's not just, go to the store and buy it. And you know what? That was hard work, and from my own hands, from milking to turning into butter to turning into powdered milk, 2 different things. I had to skim the cream. And if people want it, what is the problem?
Right. Well, newsflash, prior to even knowing what pasteurization was, millions of people drank raw goat milk, cheese, regular milk from cows, probably regular milk from horses. Who knows?
And yet here we are the government wants to dictate what can happen.
Cradle to grave.
Yes.
Cradle to grave.
Because apparently there's also a law out there, like if you want to raise your own meat chickens, meat birds, you either have to, they don't want you to, the government doesn't want you to be able to raise the meat birds and then raise the food that you feed the meat birds. They want you to have to buy from basically an approved source.
So here you go. Let's go water. Fresno County. I watched a lot of YouTube videos on what? Rainwater catchment.
Rain catchment systems, yes.
And cutting loose your gray water from your house, filtering it, and using it to water your yards and your garden, should you choose.
Okay.
Well, a lot of the folks I watched said, just do it. Being the honest guy I am, wanting to know what the county rules are, I made the mistake of calling the county. What did the county person tell me? Oh, no, you can't do that without pulling a permit, putting in a specified filter system, taking water samples every month, taking them down to the county and having them analyzed, taking soil samples every month, taking them down to the county, having the dirt analyzed, taking a soil sample and a rainwater sample no more than, I believe it was 7 days after a rain event or during the rain event, sending it down, having it analyzed. So me wanting to save money on my water bill, what I thought was helping the environment by not pumping so much gray water back to the reclaimers, which is what they do, by the way, I just dropped it and said, forget it. It's not worth it. I was going to spend $5,000 a year to save $0.
Oh, because of what they want you to do. Yeah,
bill.
Absolutely. And then if you go against anything that they want you to do, they will hound you to the ends of the earth.
Well, and they're going to know, too, if you're on a water meter and all of a sudden your usage goes down by 75%, they'll start checking your sewage downstream, because I know they do that as well, even though people think they don't. That's how they were able to find what?
Well, they found C19 in that it was already present because it had passed through people.
Yes. Thank you so much.
So let's take a little bit of a turn, and I don't know if you listened to Biden's State of the Union.
I'm afraid, because my family works me very hard. I was at that time sitting on my couch with, my right eye told my left eye to go ahead and close and start checking for light leak. I'm just kidding. No, most times I don't. Why? Because most of it's gibberish and it's untruthful. And I'm sure they fact checked him during the whole thing, and probably 50% of it were mistruths, lies, or they stretched the truth. And that comes from both sides. I don't listen to either side.
Well, we ended the speech without the Speaker of the House ripping up the speech in the end. So I guess we're one better than Nancy Pelosi. So Biden gave his speech, and it was really the normal political type of speech it sounded like he was making during an election year. But a couple of things came out of that, which was Biden calling an individual who killed Laken Riley a illegal immigrant, and then he had to go on an apology tour for using such words, even though he's used it plenty of times in the past. But he also mispronounced her name as Lincoln Riley. That's just a small gaffe in comparison. But we had a father who lost his son in Afghanistan who stood up and basically shouted and he shouted to remember Abbey Gate. He said Abbey Gate, Abbey Gate. Those were the bombing at Abbey Gate led to 13 of our service members ultimately dying. So he gets up, he shouts Abbey Gate, Abbey Gate. He's arrested. It was about 10:30 at night during the State of the Union. He was released at 12:30 a.m. Apparently, because this type of thing happens often, not just at a State of the Union, but it's technically illegal to interrupt Congress, etc.
Well, it's sedition, right?
Well, you would think so. But apparently, to people who illegally demonstrate and disrupt Congress, they can get released and immediately pay a $50 fine, and that takes care of the misdemeanor charge. And it's automatically resolved without going to court.
Isn't that what happened to that congressman? It's a misdemeanor and he paid a fine?
Basically.
Yeah.
But so in this particular case, it's a routine charge. It happens all the time, but it's kind of interesting that you have the judge, jury, and executioner all in one.
It's all the same
within
guy.
2 hours.
That's a little ticket booth.
He's arrested for interrupting. He gets there, pays $50, and he's gone. But yes, so the person who interrupted, other than our Congress people who were kind of shouting over Biden at times, who stood up and shouted Abbey Gate, was a father who lost his son. So that was one of the big things that happened during the speech. But the rest of it was just him stumping for himself and other Democrats and how he's awesome.
Here's a takeaway for me from what you just said and what I've heard from others out there in the world. What drugs do they give him before that? And that's why he was 20 minutes late, I'm sure, because it took that stuff a chance for his body to spool up and then him calm down enough to give the speech.
And he did, considering how late at night it was and how long it was, they gave him a lot of drugs and he did really well.
Yeah, see, visuals don't lie. When you see him during the week when he is stumbling and falling and he can't remember names and he's staring at walls and he's talking to curtains, and then you see that, because I have seen a couple of news clips of it, there's something they're revving him up with, and that's what Trump accused him of during the 2020 presidential election, that they wanted him to drug test because they were going to pump him full of drugs. So quick note about him is the White House has just said that Biden absolutely did not apologize for calling Laken Riley's alleged killer an illegal. So somebody's lying.
Oh, who's lying? I thought he went on his apology tour.
Well, that's what I heard all day today, was that he came out and apologized for calling the person an illegal. And this here says that, no, I did not. So either he's lying, she's lying, they're lying, or someone's lying. But you know what? It's irrelevant because it's a word salad. You being the expert in the field, knowing what you know and doing what you've done within the immigration department for multiple years, you can word salad and turn these people into whatever you want. You can say they're seeking asylum. You can say that they're beat up. You can say that they're illegal because they came through the fence illegal. Anybody, in my opinion, that walks, runs, flies, drives, digs their way underneath and comes up, if they do not immediately turn themselves in, ask for paperwork, tell them they will be there when they're asked to come. They are illegal. This is supposed to be a country or a nation of laws and rules, and we're supposed to have borders.
Yes, and to your point, we have a lot of word salad or misrepresentation of what words mean. If a person wants to come here and claim asylum, they present themselves to Border Patrol. They technically have a year to do it. Present themselves to the government and say, I am here to seek asylum. Because sometimes they might just be coming here to visit and then something happens back home that makes it impossible for them to return. Okay. But a lot of these individuals, that is not the case. That is not what they're doing, and they are not true asylum seekers either. They are economic migrants, and they are here because they want to get money from the United States and send it home. That's what they want to do. And now we're making it even easier because we don't even require
cash.
They don't even require people to work. So it's not like, oh, they're just here to get a job and send money home. Okay, but you're still putting Americans behind everybody else, and we need to stop that. And there was a Democrat who went on, I want to say it was CNN, but one of the talk shows, and they were asking about the illegal immigrants, and he basically said, like, they're number one, and citizens were number two. Those weren't his exact words, but the way he said it, it was, okay, we come secondary to people who are illegally crossing the border, residing here. Whether or not they're committing crimes is a side issue.
Well, don't you think or believe that Biden's minions knew what they were going to do once he took office with immigration? And if they really wanted all these people to come up here and they wanted to make it neat and orderly, why didn't they have a plan? They should have had a plan.
So their plan was just to take away the plan. That was their plan, because he canceled out everything that Trump had put in an executive order, and then he did his own executive orders. And now he's trying to claim that it has to be passed through Congress, that he can't do executive orders, except he proved that he could do executive orders. The thing that he can do, for those who don't, you can give enforcement priorities, and he can say this, hey, Alejandro Mayorkas, tell the bosses at ICE, CBP, and USCIS that our enforcement priorities are X, Y, and Z. He can say that, and he can make Alejandro Mayorkas say that to whom he's the boss over. So Biden saying he can do nothing is a complete lie.
He's a liar.
Right now, he said our enforcement priorities are essentially zilch.
Liar.
So that's one thing that Trump did when he came into office in technically January of 2017. He told his higher-ups, those working for him, obviously not his higher-ups, but he told them,
follow
God? The law. His higher-up. No, the head of Department of Homeland Security. And it just trickled down, and they said, the law is the law. Whatever the law is, enforce it. That's our priority.
And you want to change it, go to Congress, create a bill.
That's what he said.
Send it through markup, do all that stuff, and then send it to my desk and I'll sign it.
Yeah, well, because you have Biden right now saying, well, if the Republicans wanted to secure the border, there's a bipartisan border bill that they have, they just need to pass it and I can sign it. But that bipartisan border bill is a Ukraine bill.
So yes, we're not going to sign the same crud that you guys keep bringing out month after month, year after year. How about we come up with something legitimate that lasts for 50 years?
So along with that, the other thing that he mentioned during his speech was that he has ordered the U.S. military to set up a temporary aid port for Gaza due to the famine that is potentially hitting the area. So this is something where you ask, do they have ports? How would that work coming in? Well, Biden has repeatedly said there will be no boots on the ground.
Just ports on the ground.
Ports on the ground. They are building a temporary port, so they're going to put a ship, build a port, but U.S. boots won't be on the ground for this.
No, they'll be floating on the water. Well,
Yes.
You know what? I'm surprised that there's a problem on the Gaza Strip with famine. You know why? We and other countries have sent them probably $1 trillion total. Oh, wait a minute. What'd they do with it? They built tunnels. They built a underground war machine. And then they made a mistake back in, when was it? October?
October 7th.
Yes. So now they're being punished.
Right.
If you
And
want to look at it that way. Not the children, the women, and the innocent people.
well, guess what? When you only fund your warriors, your soldiers, and also you apparently fund these Hamas billionaires, because the guys in charge are billionaires living in amazing.
Yeah, how are guys that are getting free money and not working for it billionaires?
Right.
Kind of curious, huh?
Yeah, but they have all of this money and they're living away from the war crimes that they're committing. And then you have the soldiers with the boots on the ground that have been brainwashed into thinking that if I just use this child as a human shield, it's okay.
That must mean they have no value on life. Apparently, yeah, they have to build the port there, they being the U.S., temporarily because we airdropped supplies, and apparently we may have inadvertently killed some people.
Not only, well, there was also the point where people were rushing it, which I can't blame them. Lots of stuff has happened. Are we handling it the best? Probably not. Are they handling it the best? Probably not.
Well,
and I don't mean the people who are starving. Please don't look at it that way. But you have a country that won't identify itself as a country. You have a Palestinian state. They don't want to be a country because in order to be a country, they also
have to recognize yes.
Israel. So they will not. But you have this group of people who have been committing acts of terror for years and using women and children as human shields, and then training up their children to absolutely hate Israelis and to want to kill Israelis. But the bad guy is the person who doesn't want to be shot at, stabbed, or have any sort of threat and harm come to them or their families.
So two things. There's millions of them there in Gaza at that little choke point south by Egypt, right? I do not believe that wall is that strong that over 1 million people could not bum rush that wall and get through it and tell Egypt, you're going to help us. Oh, wait a minute. Egypt doesn't want to open their borders and allow them, number one. Number two, it's kind of reminds me of a story. I'm not going to get biblical on you and tell you the whole story, but the gist of it is, which I believe you may have learned this recently as well, doesn't this kind of remind you of someone being told, do not take anything, leave it all? And what happened?
Well, that particular person was punished by God.
And potentially...
And got dozens of others killed.
Yes, and potentially there is punishment here being dealt from that perspective or that avenue, and not just from, I don't know how I would...
So it's a biblical perspective that they could be...
entrenched in or involved in right now. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Democrat Senator Warner cedes that Trump was right on TikTok. So apparently he was pretty smart during his 4 years in office, claiming that this was an enormous security risk.
So some of the things that I have learned, and I'll admit I don't know what I don't know, but what I have learned as far as TikTok and some of these other things, like even Temu, if you buy your stuff on Temu, they have it embedded in their software to not only track what you're looking at. Oh, we're just going to look at TikTok and not Temu at this time, but what you're looking at, how long you look at it, how quickly you swipe, or when you don't swipe, what you hover over, and then they are able to pinpoint your location, and then they also put in tracking for when you're off app, what you have on your phone, and in some cases, they've embedded programs to where they can look at your camera, so they're looking at you.
So here's the thing. Okay, you got to look at this from both sides. Now, is the federal government, ours, the U.S. government, only upset because China is a foreign country? Because
yes, they do the same thing.
Because they do 100% the exact same thing. They have the same type of tracking software. They have the same ability to turn our phones on. And let me tell you, I'm always into sidebar stories, but here's a little quick sidebar. The very first time we bought a smart television, got up in the middle of the night one night to go get a drink of water, TV came on. Yet the screen was not giving me the appearance that it was trying to come on, come on. It was like a camera in the screen had flipped and was looking at me walking down the hallway. Now, I believe it was 100% accurate. And so much so that we have refrigerators now that are smart and will track your every move as well. Not just your food habits and what you're pulling in and out of the fridge. It'll track you just like all this other tracking software will.
So there's a lot of different ways that this software is being used, not just with TikTok, with Temu, what you're buying, how much you're buying, what your bank account, what else you spend it on, and then it will just track you physically and then other stuff that you're doing and then who you're with and what they're doing, etc. But something that has been going on, as we've seen, if I get on your Wi-Fi, it's connected us up. It knows that we're doing stuff, so then it could recommend something to you that you'll say, hey, I saw this cool video on this. Like, that's weird. I was thinking about buying, insert that thing. So they can engineer who's around you to help push what they want you to see. Another thing they've done with Snapchat, they're looking into Snapchat because Snapchat claims that it pulls who is on your phone. So if you share your contacts with Snapchat, it will say, oh, hey, this person has a Snapchat too. Do you want to connect up? A lawyer, in attempting to see like how much they do that, like, oh, hey, we pull it from your contacts versus how much of it is their manipulation, bought a phone and bought it. It was one of those, bought it with cash, didn't connect their name up to
Burner
it.
phone.
Bought a burner phone, activated the phone, got a new phone number, did not put any contacts at all on this phone. Signed up for Snapchat, said they were 16 years old. And within a very short period of time, Snapchat was suggesting sexual content, very inappropriate content for a 16-year-old. And so when they were called out on it, they said, oh, well, what likely happened was the person who used to own that phone number must have been friends with these types of people. Like, okay, but I put that I was 16, so why did you still suggest them? So they did it again. They bought a different burner phone, different age level, no contact, same thing. They were having people who were sending photos of themselves inappropriately, people who were requesting things inappropriately. Why would they suggest these things? Why would Snapchat suggest these things? TikTok, apparently, if you're like 14 years old, it will start suggesting videos of self-harm. I think that part of it where they can implode us by destroying our teenagers.
Absolutely, 100%, because TikTok in China is only used for education. That's it. I've watched a couple of videos on regular news outlets that show exactly what the Chinese people use TikTok for, and it's not for all the short clip videos and everything that they're being used for here in America. I mean, I guess if I could make, a couple $1 million a month off of TikTok, I'd use it too, but I'd only use it for legitimate purposes, making cash.
Cash monies.
And that's what a lot of these apps are used for that our federal government uses. The IRS has embedded themselves in them. They use them for money tracking purposes. Case in point, person makes $50,000 a year after taxes, is buying on average with, his home payments and all that, $100,000 to $150,000 a year in stuff. They know he has some illegal operation going on or some cash side job or
Right, because now Cash App and PayPal and all of them, they have to report, and the government is definitely tracking. And in fact, if you don't know, on on Venmo, among others, is you can do it where it's public facing and you can do it where it's private facing. So you can send somebody money and it's public facing. So if I input your information, your phone number or whatever it is, how I would know you to send you money, I can look at your history. And if people have put it as public, anyone can see that.
Okay, here's a government question for you.
Yes.
Why? What is the percentage of my money and your money that should be given to the federal government?
Zero.
Who has come out and made that decision that, hey, if you go mow 100 lawns a week and you make $1,000, I want 10%. Hey, if you go to work 6 days a week, 50 hours a week, and you make $100,000 a year off of that job, I want 25 to 40% of it. Then the state you work for, they want their 10 to 14% here in California. Then if you go to the national parks, they want, quote, a $20 fee, which is a tax. Or you go put gas in your vehicle so you can go back and forth to do said jobs. Oh, we want out of $4 a gallon, $1.10 of it is taxes. Oh, you go to the grocery store. If you buy a loaf of bread that's cold, there's no tax on it. But if you buy a loaf of bread from the deli in the form of a sandwich,
Because it's warmed up or it's made.
Whom invented all this stuff?
Well, our government found a way. I believe it was, was that the 16th Amendment? When they realized that they could start getting some money and some extra money and then a little bit of extra money and then more on top of that, where they just kept going with it. And now it is never enough. We make everybody else the bad guy, that they have more, so they need to pay more, even though they could be doing it on credit. They don't really have as much money as you think that they do, but here you look at them and say they have more, therefore they must pay a higher percentage. We make other people the bad guy. Our government's really good at doing this, pitting us against each other. And then we just think, they need to pay more, not realizing that the they is you. Because tell me, who as a citizen thinks that making $50,000 a year is making it in America, making it in California?
Not even close, considering a 2-bedroom apartment, just like we talked about 2 weeks ago. Now here in California is upwards of $2,500 to $2,700 a month.
But look at the level of taxation that we have. As we go up, they want to tax it even more. And we have a mythical bad guy. Oh, if only millionaires would pay their fair share. If only billionaires would pay their fair share. Again, case in point, Joe Biden in his State of the Union says it's not fair that billionaires pay less than the average teacher or whoever he decided to liken it to. It's like, well, as a percentage, I believe 63, was that the number that we talked about before? 60-something% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck or less. They can't even make ends meet. 47% was the last number that I saw, but I believe it's gone higher now. Don't even pay anything in federal taxes. They may get some taken out, but they're getting money right back. So that is someone who does not make enough money to survive a normal lifestyle. And yet we continually find that they have ways to nickel and dime us. As soon as we get that little bit better, okay, I'm going to be a little bit better off. Oh, I can afford a car now. I don't have to take the bus. Guess what? You have to pay taxes on that used car that's been sold 5 times already.
And taxed every time.
And someone recently suggested to me, and I got to look in to see if it's the actual number, that a vehicle in the state of California, will end up getting the original MSRP off of that car by the time that it has its life cycle, because of the number of times it will be sold and the fact that they collect taxes on it each time.
I believe that. And I call it pick in your pocket. And that's why I always make that smart aleck comment that I walk around with my wallet in my front pocket. That way it can't be picked as much by municipalities. And you don't stand a chance. Because if you complain, then you're a January 6th. If you vote somebody out of office, you get somebody in office that starts out with noble goods noble intentions, and they end up going off the rails too. Very few come out of there as honest as they were when they went, because money breeds corruption. And there's so much of it they don't care. Well, at some point in time, somebody's got to wake up and say, you know, we're tired of paying these taxes. We got to stop this stuff.
Right. You pay, as you noted, the life cycle of paying your taxes. So you finally can get off the bus and you can buy a car, and you got to pay lots of taxes just to register it. You want to drive it on the roadways. Guess what? Every time you get a gallon of gas, you're paying extra taxes. Oh, you want to go get something that's already been made because you're trying to get from A to B. Maybe you got to go pick up your kids at school. Got to, stuff their faces real quick because you want to get to baseball practice. And because it's being made, guess what? You pay taxes on that.
Yes.
You're lucky enough, you were able to save up and buy a house. Oh, guess what? Property taxes. You got to pay that every year just for the luxury of having a house.
And unfortunately, that used car that you're talking about, the person buying generally is half life cycled or more. So then when it breaks, unfortunately, it may break to the point where, number one, you can't afford to fix it, especially now with the new electric cars and even the used electric cars. And then you have no car. It's parked, so you're back to riding the bus, but you're still making a car payment.
You're making a car payment, or guess what? You got to non-op it because you can't get it operational yet. The fee on that, while low, sometimes you can't even afford that. But then you have to pay to get it operational again. And if you save up enough money and you get it operational, you have to go back to the state of California and pay another fee, which you have to do annually just for the luxury of saying, yes, this is my car, and yes, I'm driving it on the roadway.
Yes, and I never understood
annual registration.
I never understood vehicle registration, especially in California, that I need to pay somebody annually to tell me that it's my car. I can see paying the taxes, fair taxes, when you first buy it, and then the next person when you sell it. Not paying registrations while you own the vehicle. It should be re-registered to the new owner. Then that cycle goes, wait a minute, you explained it all 10 minutes ago. They have gotten so crafty at picking your pocket that they're generating tax revenue from all angles.
Yeah.
Just picking your pocket on a consistent basis.
And so you have your sales tax. You have your income tax. Now, when I said that 47% of people aren't paying, it's federal income tax. You still have Social Security. You still have Medicare in the state of California. You have SSDI, disability insurance. But that's through the state of California. It's a tax. And over again, they have found ways to tax you, even if you think that you aren't getting taxed. And then once you get over a certain threshold and they consider you too rich, all bets are off. You no longer get those write-offs. Now you're going to be paying your federal tax. And guess what? By raising minimum wage, they are getting full-time workers up to that level where they will no longer qualify for certain write-offs or benefits that they've been accustomed to.
That's why lawyers should never be congressmen and senators. That's an amendment we should have put in place. Sorry. You have to be from your hometown. You have to be a farmer, a businessman that, sells rubber dog stuff overseas. You can't have been an attorney who nobody understands because they're so smart and they can put together legal lingo that you can't understand. Just kidding. Good for the lawyers.
So in other news with Biden, the last thing I'll mention on him for his gaffes. So after he did so well on his State of the Union, because I will say he was pretty coherent the majority of the time, didn't mumble and fumble as much. I know I said the thing about Lincoln Riley versus Laken Riley, that could be considered a small gaffe or a small fumble. So he goes to a speaking engagement in Pennsylvania, and he asks the people there, he says, I have a message for you. Pennsylvania, I have a message for you. Send me to Congress.
Drugs wore off.
Yep.
And just think, 40% of the population in America still thinks that he's okay to be president for 4 more years.
Right. And I can see that you don't want Trump. That's fine. He definitely wasn't the person who I thought was even going to get the nomination in 2016. I'll admit, I've been there. I did not see that. But just because you don't want Donald Trump, I don't understand how you can say that Biden is fit to serve another 4-year term.
Nope. We talked about this about 4 podcasts back. This has now become elder abuse. His wife and others there in D.C. should be held accountable for abusing an 81-year-old man who is obviously in the beginning stages of dementia or just terrible memory lapses that old people have. And no, Trump does not have those same memory lapses. He is that old. He is slowing down, but I think that he can push this thing through for 4 years. Problem is, here's the problem.
What's the problem?
Problem is, sold now, 61. I've been through a few election cycles. We have these big ebbs and flows, and even if he does win, even if he does get out of most of these trials and just has to pay fines and penalties, even though I don't think he did much wrong, he can go for 4 years. If he doesn't pick a super VP that can actually win, we're going to be right back into this democratic socialist thing, only it's going to be worse this time. Because every election cycle that these people win and get in office, it gets worse and worse. And you get the Tlaibs and these others that, on a personal note, may be a fantastic person. Helping run a country of 400 million people, she needs to pack her bags, go to Somalia, but this is the point I'm getting at. She needs to go there. She needs to go to Haiti right now. Take a look at the consequences for actions like what these people are proposing. Now, I know where she's from.
What you're saying. What's her name, though? The other one. The other one that's from Somalia. Born in Somalia.
Yeah, forgetting her name. But they need a hardcore visual, a lesson.
Omar. So I could see Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar going together because Omar just talked about how she is a representative of Somali first. So she can go to Somalia and go be your rep first.
Yes.
She hasn't been there since she was 4 years old.
Go take a look.
Go back.
Do you really want, look at how we're degrading now. Do you really want this country to be like that? Wait a minute. I say it all the time. Is this the greatest country on earth now? This used to be supposedly the wealthiest, most powerful, most respectful, kindest nation on earth that I was raised to believe in. Okay. If you do stuff like that, you think it's going to end up like this? We have open borders and you let 9 million people in and 500,000 or 1 million of them are criminals? Are we okay with that? We have enough criminality as it is. We don't need more. We don't need more homeless. We don't have room for them.
Right. We already have a problem. And now we're putting our homeless in a lower spot because we have stopped taking care of them in areas where we were taking care of them and now put people who are illegally residing here.
Even school children in Illinois and other states, they're actually taking them out of their schools to make room for homeless to sleep.
Yes, and in those locations, they've started asking people who live in the area to start taking in people who are illegally residing here to help house them. But I don't remember there being this great push for homeless veterans that needed housing or families that needed housing that weren't tied to drug-related issues.
Well, let's go to Tlaib and Omar's residence and home and see if they have locks. They have doorknobs, locks, and deadbolts on their doors. If they're that confident and these people are not thieves and they're not bad people, then take the mechanisms off your door, open your door up, and let whomever from whichever country come and go as you please. China is not sending all those military-age men over to America just to become U.S. citizens. I'm sorry. Not happening. There's a method to their madness.
Oh, 100%. And in some cases, we're just mad while they have a method to their madness. Some things that we're focusing on here is to shut down a 100-year-old ferry that we've had running in California. Now, they've done some upgrades over time, but California's oldest ferry is on the brink of having to shut down because the government wants them to go 100% electric. Or I should say zero emissions.
Just like New York and their new green policy with pizza parlors.
They want them to go zero emissions. Well, in order to go zero emissions, companies have to shell out millions upon millions upon millions, and they haven't been making that money. It's not like they just have all this cash in the bank that they're like, hey, we're making so much money. So they want to shut down one of the oldest ferries because California is concentrating on green energy or green programs. We can't get the homeless crisis. We can't get over our homeless crisis. We can't help out real people, real humans who are in need right now. But we can talk about something that maybe might kind of happen in the future.
There's nothing that they do that's correct and works. Nothing. You look at it, nothing works. The homeless, the bridges, the roads.
We have such high road taxes. We should have the best roads in the country here in California. We have such high income taxes that every program that we want to have happen should be perfectly run and a well-oiled machine by now.
And if the federal government and the state government, let's go state, if they want to take all these taxes from us and they want us to go totally green in the state, then pay for it. Let's go green. 1 year. You guys pay for 100% of the plan. If I own 100 diesel trucks that run up and down the state and deliver produce, don't ask me to pay for it out of my pocket. Pay for it.
Right. I own this thing.
Pay for it.
You've decided to upend. I think that's part of how they pick winners and losers, right? Because they're going to ultimately give certain groups of people money to do
like
those
Panera?
things. Yes. There is somebody who's going to be the winner in this and somebody who's going to be the loser, and they are picking the winners and losers. Even if the green energy thing doesn't work out in the end, they've picked who they will allow to remain in business. And Panera has come out and said after all of the backlash, okay, I guess we'll pay $20 an hour too. But that's only because there was backlash.
Forced to, yes.
Yes, bad press, bad publicity. And we have Gavin Newsom like, sometimes that's just how it happens when you're making sausage. Things just happen. Yeah, It just so happens that your campaign donor.
Oh, like PG&E and this latest rate hike and a new fee?
Yes, they have new fees. They have a new percentage. It's going to hit us next month.
Thanks to the PUC and the biggest contributor or one of them to his campaigns.
Yes, and they are aiming for $100 a month from January to December, that by December our bills will have gone up this year alone $100 a month.
You know what that tells you? That tells you if you get older like me and you want to become a snowbird, so you want to spend half the year down in Arizona or some warm state, when you come back, guess what? You're still going to have PG&E bill, even though your power's been completely shut off and nobody's in your home.
Yes, and I have found even on the days that we aren't home and when we're out of town or when something happens magically, those seem to be high days for us and our usage.
Amazing, isn't it?
It is.
Pacific Got You Electric. Change their name.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Gotcha.
That would be...
We are the only game in town. Pacific Got You Electric.
Yep. So in another bit of news on the VA front, so the VA started a new travel reimbursement program. It used to be kind of done by paper, that before you left the VA facility for that day, you could basically turn in a paper chit. They would process it and you can get reimbursed. If you have to travel to a VA facility that's outside of your normal commuting area, you can get...
Would that be considered mileage outside of network?
Not exactly.
No?
Still
okay.
In network, but...
Oh, okay.
So as an example, an individual who is the wife of a retired major accompanied her husband to medical appointments on November 7th. It was a VA outpatient clinic in Cambridge, Maryland. It was 96 miles from the couple's home in Virginia. So following the visit, she did her paper travel claim into the facility's depository and waited on reimbursement. When it hadn't come by December 29th, she got online and then found that there was an online reimbursement system. So she had already done the paper one, and then she's like, okay, well, I can't figure this out, so I'll do the online one. So she attempted to refile the claim, and that didn't work. So she made a few phone calls, and then she learned that her husband would not get reimbursed for the gas and mileage because the electronic claim was submitted later than 30 days. Even though she submitted a paper one, they said the paper wasn't being allowed anymore, even though they accepted
They
it.
accepted the paper. Oh, my goodness.
And then because she didn't do it within 30 days electronically, she wasn't going to receive payment, or her husband wasn't going to receive payment. So another thing, this company that helped to roll out, or this program, so the Veterans Health Administration rolled out the Beneficiary Travel Self-Service System in November of 2020 to replace the paper system, this standalone system that was at, well, not just paper, but it was at kiosks at medical facilities. Their goal, because it was developed by Liberty IT Solutions, their goal was designed to automatically resolve claims and pay them out 90% of the time. That there may be 10% of the cases that have more difficulties.
That's
or
a good
there's
number.
an issue. Yeah, so do you want to guess what their percentage is?
50%.
That's a very good guess. So the OIG was looking into it and calculated that veterans use the web portal for only about 49% of claims. So it's only working out if you use the system. And then of that, a smaller percentage is actually being dealt with. And in some cases, it's as low as 17% of claims filed are automatically adjudicated, not 90%.
So another system that should be successful is a failure.
Yes. You would think that travel reimbursement is something that companies and government has done for years, so this should be a pretty straightforward.
It should be a no-brainer.
A no-brainer. And unfortunately, here's who knows how much the government paid for this broken system, because the government contracted it out.
Well,
And here we are again.
I'm sure millions.
So one update we have on a story that we brought you, well, it's been a little while now. The Rust armorer, Hannah Gutierrez Reed, was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in the death of Helena Hutchins. So she was being tried first, basically, in the involuntary manslaughter, and she was found guilty. And now is yet to be seen. It is unclear what will happen with Alec Baldwin's case. It's still pending, but he was charged as well. So Gutierrez Reed was prosecuted first, and we will see if that comes to the same type of conclusion. Technically, with Gutierrez Reed, she was the armorer, so yes, responsible for the gun, and whether or not there was a live round or not live round, but then Alec Baldwin violated a lot of protocol for having guns on set. One of them being you're not supposed to point it at anyone.
Yeah, and he's not the sharpest tool in the shed. He's an arrogant, you know what.
He is.
But that happens with these narcissists and these little mini sociopaths. They get a little power, little position, little money, and the stuff all goes right to their head.
Well, we see it with these celebrity types. They get a little bit of money and it goes to their head. We see it with our representatives. They get a little bit of our money, it goes to their head, and then they want to see how far they can take it.
Well, it'd be nice to be able to record these people and listen to them and see how they really feel about us. If they think that the American populace is a bunch of true dumb, you-know-whats, like a lot of news media outlets say they feel we are.
I'm sure they think that we are a bunch of idiots because we allow them to keep fighting over R's and D's when the R's and D's have shown us who they are. Or who they are not in some cases.
Yes.
And in a last bit of news, Governor Hochul has sent 750 National Guard troops to New York City subways following violence that has been happening on the subway. So we have seen before where the mayor of New York said that he also felt unsafe, like when he was elected, and not riding the subway to and from work. And then now you have Governor Hochul, who is deploying members of the Guard and 250 state and MTA officers to subway stations. Do you know what they're going to do now, though?
They're going to hand out Meals on Wheels?
No. They're going to start forcibly inspecting passengers' bags following some of the violence that has happened. Now, I don't know if they're seeing people come down and pull something out of their bag and then attack. Because some of the videos that I've seen of attacks, the person just shoves somebody out on the platform or attacks them inside. Maybe I'm mistaken and they are pulling stuff out of their bag.
They look at this crime the wrong way because they look at the innocent bystander as the perp, and they look at the perp as the innocent bystander. They have right is wrong, wrong is right. They have this role reversal. Everything's backwards.
Yeah, so now if you want to take your purse and a bag, maybe you have a computer, and you want to go to work and you want to ride the subway, you're subject to random inspections coming and going on the subway system. So does that make, and you know what Governor Hochul says? Don't ride the subway if you don't want to get inspected. So don't ride the subway.
Don't go to work.
Don't go to work. Don't get on a plane. Don't go here. Don't go there. You have given up your rights to exist in society. You have no rights.
Well, women aren't women anymore. Men aren't men.
I wonder how, I'm going to have to look up how many cases there were of people like pulling something out of their bags, and
right.
Or if this is just a...
Well, there was someone at work today that showed me a short video of a lady supposedly walking up to TSA at an airport, and there was some documentation on the wall that was showing the TSA agents how they're supposed to handle U.S. citizens with documentation and undocumented illegals. And I don't know if that document was true or not.
So there are airports that will accept illegal immigrants passing through without appropriate identification, but how many years have they been hounding us? If you don't have a federal compliant ID,
you don't
may
fly.
Not. Yes. So as a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident, you are lower than people who are illegally here in the United States.
Seeing we act PO'd, but nobody's forming a non-violent group, aka real voters, to take care of this.
Right. And you have, I've known some really good TSA agents in my time. And in fact, they left the TSA to go work for another agency, and they were really good people. And I understand that there are going to be really good people in that job. So there's my caveat. However, I have personally had my laptop picked up from my bag because I was pulled off for 100% inspection. So they're pulling my stuff out of my bag, patting me down, doing all that. They picked it up, held it out like where your arms are level, and then dropped it on the table because they could. There's nothing you can do about it. I'm like, excuse me. And they're like, what? They're going to do it. Oh, and then I had baby food traveling with an infant, and they wanted to wipe each and every single container to make sure that it's not a bomb, essentially. And so I had to wait while they wiped every food container, which isn't bad because technically this stuff was sealed. Other moms have had their breast milk opened, and then they dunk in the little test strip. So they just ruined the breast milk by dunking in the test strip. One mom said they checked. She was on a work trip, and they checked every single bottle. So they ruined every single bottle. Wow. But yeah, no ID, illegal, no problem.
Well, we shall see how that goes.
This has been a podcast produced and edited by the Dirt Sailor duo. Mark and Shannon are a father-daughter team who both served in the United States Navy. This production is protected by copyright laws. Until next time, anchors away.